So you built the perfect workflow, the client loves the demo, they're ready to pay. Then they ask you the question that makes you freeze. So how do we actually use this? Do you host it? Do we host it? What about API keys? Who maintains it? How do we manage the costs? And you realize you have no idea what to say. This isn't a technical problem, it's a business model crisis. You've been so focused on building workflows that you forgot to decide what business you're actually in. Are you selling products or services, one-time builds or ongoing relationships? Today I'll show you the 3 delivery models that actually work, when to use each one, and how to price them so you never have to wing this conversation again. Let's get into it. So the first thing that we need to do is address an uncomfortable truth, because you've been thinking like a technician instead of a business owner. And the problem is technicians wonder, where should I be hosting this thing, or who looks after APIs? But a business owner asks, what kind of relationship do I actually want with this client? And you need to think about it from that perspective. The hosting decision flows from the business logic, the business model that you have, not the other way around. And it simplifies things for you. Clients will come to you and you tell them immediately what it is that you offer, not we have option 1, we have option 2, and we have option 3, because that makes them choose and that makes the whole conversation longer, harder to buy, and a whole bunch of other reasons, but it also complicates your life in other ways. So there are 3 questions that you need to answer when you're trying to approach this. 1, are you selling a product or a service? 2, do you want recurring revenue or one-time payments? And 3, how much ongoing responsibility do you actually want to have? Your answers determine everything from your delivery method to your pricing structure to your client positioning, aka what you're going to be offering these people when you reach out to them. So there are 3 models, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but the larger problem is that a lot of you are probably mixing all 3 of these things. One client, you might be doing one thing, and the other you're doing something else. And that's okay if you've got this thing working, but I imagine if you're watching this, you're trying to understand these things a lot better so that you don't have to be stuck answering these questions every time you reach out to a client. So instead of doing improv for every single delivery you have, you need to decide on a model. Are you going to have a product model where you build once and hand off and walk away? Are you going to have a service model where you have ongoing relationship with these people, but you have to deal with every little need that they have on an ongoing basis? Or do you want a hybrid model where you do the initial build and then offer them some form of maintenance contract? Now, the third one is my favorite, which is a spoiler alert, and I'll get into that for reasons later on in this video, but it's something I've been doing for the last 12 years amongst a much bigger framework. But for the most part, this is how it would start and how it would finish, because it's really lucrative. And that brings us neatly into model 1, which is the build and bail structure. Now, it's pretty simple what it is. You're going to build them a workflow or a product, whatever it is that you're selling to these people as part of the automation. You're going to document it thoroughly, and then you're going to completely hand it over to these people and walk away forever. So when do we use this? If you want simple, stable workflows and you don't have the capacity to do maintenance afterwards, it's obviously a really good place to start. But then another thing is if clients have a technical team already. So obviously if they have someone who can do the maintenance and who can just take your documentation and then maintain this thing forever, they're not really going to be interested in a maintenance contract, though there are caveats to that I'll get into. But another thing on this, if they don't have a technical team, what you can do as part of your build and bail is actually train someone on their team to take over the technical stuff, in which case it increases the amount of money you can charge up front. Another time you want to use this is when you want high margins, but no headaches. So if you don't want to have this thing where you manage a service for someone and all the stress that comes with it, this is pretty straightforward. And then finally, if you can build similar solutions repeatedly, this is really good because you can just churn them out and keep getting client after client. But obviously it's much easier to upsell to a current client than it is to continuously get new clients. So that's another trade-off that you need to think about. So the delivery process for this is pretty straightforward. The client owns the entire infrastructure. Now, you might go in there and build on your own laptop. You build the MVP, get things going because it's a lot faster and you can't fuck anything up on the client site. Then you ship it into their environment. It could be in cloud if they have 0 capability currently and you just want to get things started. And then they can move into self-hosted later. But that's their decision. You just help them get to that decision with logical points that I'll cover in another technical video. But after you've done that and you've handed things over to them, they pay for the hosting costs directly. They pay for all their API stuff, everything like that. It's all them, nothing to do with you. You just give them some advisory. So you need to actually have a little bit of intelligence behind the decisions that you're making when you're architecting this decision for them. But you get temporary admin access to this. You're never going to own the stuff. And once you leave their site, as part of security, you should no longer have access to this. And you should make that very clear to them. Then step 2 is to build in their environment. So again, once we've shipped all of the demo stuff from our laptop or your workstation, put it straight into their environment, and that's it. Everything else gets built and tested in a dev/prod version of whatever they're doing. You use their credentials, their API keys, all of their production stuff once you've tested it in a test environment at a very small scale. no data ever touches your systems once it's in there. And that's how you separate all the different problems that can occur if you mix things up. And believe me, there's a shitload of problems. So then point 3 is you need to have really good documentation and training handoff. You can't just have this deliver once thing and leave straight away without them understanding how to actually use your product. Because remember, if people don't adopt your stuff, it never gets used, and then you get a bad reputation for developing shit products. So make sure when you're doing this, you document everything. For me, I like to do stuff text-based so they have clear playbook. And then I'll also record a Loom video walking through the entire process, every single functionality with some troubleshooting methodologies, some common things that could potentially go wrong as a result of users doing X, Y, Z. I record those things for them so that they have a log of it, and it helps their technical team on site find a starting point when they're trying to solve problems. But then also I'll have a workshop before I leave site. So I will make sure everybody understands how the product works. I'll get them to run through it with me on a call, and then I'll do a handover kind of thing. And as part of this one-off build, you should definitely offer some form of support. I've seen people offer just 7 days, which I think is a little bit low. Normally I would say 30 is probably the lowest that I would do. This is completely separate to a maintenance contract, and it is obviously optional, but I would always have it because sometimes there are bugs that you just can't test until people are heavily using your product. So it's always good for you to offer the client some form of support because, again, you want their referral at the end of this engagement. Next up, that brings us on to how to price this. Now, I have a complete video on value-based pricing, which you definitely need to watch if you haven't already, because it breaks down in depth how I price any form of AI engagement at the moment. But for a one-time fee, it obviously depends on so many high-level factors that I'm not going to go into this video, but we're looking at urgency, the client size, how big a problem you're solving, all of those sort of things go into this. But for a one-time fee, you're probably going to be starting somewhere on the lower scale between 5K, but it can go quite high again if you're building them a massive product or solving huge business constraints and offering some form of strategy behind it. So I can't give you an exact price on this video, but that's why you should check out the value-based pricing video. The point is that when you're doing this, there are ways that you can increase this even if it is a one-off build. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if they don't have a massive technical capability, you factor that into your price. It extends the length of the engagement, but it also increases your value because you're going to be architecting the solution. You're going to be training their team. You're going to be passing down your expertise onto their team to make them technically fluent so that they can maintain this themselves once you're gone. So you can see how that gives you much larger upfront money and far more leverage when you're reaching out to these clients. And you can obviously add modular add-ons, documentation packages that evolve as they want to evolve their systems. Basically, what I'm trying to list here are a bunch of add-ons that you can think where you can increase your pricing and your leverage because of the things that they don't have. More business constraints that you just solve with your strategy. And by now, I'm sure the pros and cons have become quite clear to you. But just to cover them, there are high margins and no ongoing costs. And it's really easy because you get a clean break. You go in there, you do your thing, you do a great job, and you leave the business straight away. And you don't really have to have this long-term worry where you're looking after this client constantly. So it's a little bit less stressful. And it scales well, especially if you have templates. If you have something that you've nailed and you can just keep churning out to clients, again, you're going to make that money fast, providing you can get those clients fast enough. But the cons are that there are no recurring revenue. And to me, this is a massive thing because like I told you before, upselling is way easier than reselling. So if you have a client who's giving you recurring revenue and you work with them over a really long period of time, the likelihood of them referring you increases every single day that you keep doing a good job for them. So you need to keep that in mind. And the second con is that they can still blame you if things go wrong. So despite you doing this hit and miss and never speaking to them again, they can still blame you, come back to you and say, hey, you didn't do this thing, or they can go and tell people that you didn't do this thing properly. So I don't really like it for that reason as well. And now we get on to model 2, where my voice is changing as a result of my toddler giving me COVID. So module 2 is the managed service. And again, pretty straightforward in terms of what it does is you run everything. It really is that straightforward. You host, maintain, you manage everything that these clients need from you. They pay you a monthly fee in order to receive that kind of thing. So you own the infrastructure, but you serve their business needs. And you can think of that like most of the products that you use online at the moment. Managed service. It's pretty straightforward. But the question is, when do you want to use it? So if you have complex workflows that require ongoing optimization, you could potentially use it that way. These are things that don't really get templatized over and over again, but you've made one awesome solution that you think tons of people are going to want to use, then it's a really good idea. The second one is clients who want results, but they don't want the technical ownership. And for the most part, that's a lot of people because right now, a lot of people don't have that AI capability. I'm working with a mid-market company at the moment of about 2,000 people, and they literally do not have an AI person. They have one CTO who's so rammed with other stuff that he can't even focus on this kind of thing. So smaller clients who aren't really thinking about this, they're definitely going to have that headache where they don't want the technical ownership or they can't find it. But then also, if you want predictable recurring revenue, this is the model for you. It's not the only one, but it is one of them. And if you have proprietary tools or custom solutions, again, this is going to increase your value and your leverage, and that means you can charge far more money because all of these people will come to you for this amazing solution. So how does the delivery process work for this? Again, pretty straightforward. It's your infrastructure, their access. So you run everything on your end-to-end instances. This could be on a VPS, it could be using end-to-end cloud, however you want to do it, but that's how it works. You create dedicated workspaces for clients. Now, you might ask yourself, why do you have to do this? And the reason is, one, security. If somebody breaks into your end-to-end environment, then they essentially have access to every single one of your clients. But two, you don't want to be mixing up workflows. You don't want client A's stuff going into client B because you didn't label something properly or you routed something incorrectly. That would be a catastrophe, and you can essentially lose all of your clients and your business if you make that kind of mistake. But then the third thing that you need to think of is that you're going to be managing all of the technical aspects. But on top of that, there are client requests, there are client questions, there are non-technical questions and non-technical things that you need to take care of, and you will be managing all of that. So step 2 of this process is that there is secure credential management, and it's super important to keep this in mind because it's no longer their responsibility. You're in charge of their environment security. They're going to be giving you access to their API keys and things like that, but when you use them in the workflows that you build for them and store, you need to make sure that they're encrypted and stored securely. You also need to make sure that you have key rotation procedures. Every quarter or every 30 days, however you want to do it, their API keys need to change. You would be in charge of that. You would be in charge of then going into the workflows and updating them accordingly. And it's super important, again, for security reasons. So the third thing that you want to have in place for this type of solution is an SLA and monitoring. So an SLA is literally just a service level agreement, 99.9% uptime. So if you can guarantee that, then you offer it. If you don't understand how that would work, the easiest thing might be to look at what end-to-end cloud offers. And you can kind of piggyback off that because if they're guaranteeing it, technically you're using their solution, in which case you can offer the same thing. The second thing you need to understand about is having a very clear scope, outlining what they get. So this will shoot you in the foot if you don't have it, especially with this method, because clients will expect one thing. And if they don't get it as part of a managed service, because they were under the impression that they were going to get it, you'll be in massive shit for not delivering on it, and they would probably just leave if it turns out that they thought one thing and then they don't actually get it. So very clear scoping is super important. And you need to have weekly performance reports. Because if you don't have these weekly performance reports, people don't understand why they actually have a managed service. Sure, we have this thing and this guy's making sure everything runs for us and our sales team has this amazing lead gen workflow. But if they don't see the value that they're getting beyond that out of a managed service, like look at all of this stuff that I've made performant, look at how I've decreased the amount of errors that you would have had to take care of yourself, that sort of stuff. Track your metrics. And then as part of the whole monitoring process, you need to use something like Helicone or Portkey, depending on the size of the engagement you have, to actually monitor the products that you've built for these people, to give yourself some perspective, to make sure that your prompts are performing, to make sure that you're running evaluations and things like that. And I have another video on this, which you should check out, all about maintenance. So the pricing for this, again, you need to check out the value-based pricing because everything stems on there. But it works in two ways. You'll charge a setup fee, so originally onboarding them and setting them up, getting everything in place, building their product essentially the way that they want it, because despite it being a managed service, there is still going to be some form of tailoring to the client's needs. And then the monthly management fee, which is whatever you would charge per month to the client for them to be hosted in your environment and get all of the managed goodness. So it includes hosting, monitoring, basic maintenance, things like that. But then you can also charge for requests that they might want to add on top of that. Say they want some form of massive functionality attached to your managed service that you provide out the box. You could charge a separate setup fee for that specific build and then change the maintenance contract to cater for that as well. So it's very playful the way that you want to do this, or you can keep it static and just offer one product. Point is, you can pick and choose with these sorts of things. It's not always set in stone the way that you go about them. So pros and cons of this. The pros, recurring revenue stream, amazing. Everybody wants that. You also have complete control over the quality because you're in charge of everything, your entire environment. What you say goes. You don't have to worry about clients doing weird things that you later have to go and fix. You can set amazing quality and order from the beginning as long as you know what you're doing. But they're also locked into your ecosystem. Some people might think that's a con, but if you look at the strategy of every big business out there, like AWS, Splunk, whatever, you name it, everybody is moving to cloud because once they have their clients in their ecosystem, it's much harder to leave. They're used to it. All their data is in there and their entire workflow is built around it. So with them in your ecosystem, you have much more leverage over the client. So it's really a good place for you to be. But the cons are that you have ongoing operational responsibility. Obviously, it's part of the thing. You have a massive headache as a result of this. There is stress with it. I worked for managed services maybe 14 years ago, and I started in IT, and it was insane. The guy who owned the place was one step away from having a stroke, even with 12 of us helping him up. So you got to keep in mind that if you're doing really well and business is booming, you're probably going to have a lot of headaches yourself. So I generally step away from this kind of thing. And that brings us on to model 3, which is the hybrid approach. And this is my favorite approach, just like I said in the beginning of this video. Because you get the best of both worlds without that shitty responsibility that gnaws behind your ear of the managed service. So what it is, the client owns the infrastructure, you provide ongoing maintenance to them and optimization services after you've done the initial build. So when would I use this? All the time. But if a client wants ownership but they lack expertise, this is an amazing thing to do because you can go in there again, you can train a team, you can do all those things that I spoke about, but you can also set yourself up as the main point of contact when things go really wrong and they need that escalation. So you can still have this with technical teams, but you are now just the top dog that they contact when everything goes wrong, if they want upgrades and things like that. If your workflows need regular updates, you also want to be using this because again, that maintenance forms part of the regular upgrades and updates and things like that. And if you want recurring revenue without the full operational load, this is amazing. Because it's not a complete managed service and you're not doing all the hosting yourself, you can set very clear guidelines about what your maintenance contract actually offers these people. So you can see how you can get all the money without having the massive headache of actually hosting all of this stuff. And it's really good for building long-term consulting relationships because there's a difference between having a managed service, which you are a service provider, as opposed to being a consultant who has this relationship with the business. There's a subtle difference, and you'll start to see that soon. So I'm pretty sure at this point you can see that the delivery model is just a mix of step 1 and step 2 with a few nuances. So the client infrastructure is essentially owned by them, and they give you management access so that you can do your thing. So they own the end-to-end cloud or the self-hosted instance wherever you've guided them towards based on your intelligence. You maintain admin access for the maintenance, the upgrades, the things that they need done once you've done the initial build. You have a shared responsibility model with clear boundaries, and that's super important. So you'll be responsible for X, Y, Z. You'll give them this much time every single week as part of your maintenance agreement for X amount of money in your pocket. But then you also need to tell them what they will be in charge of, because it's not implied just by you saying, I'm only going to take care of ABC. That doesn't imply that they're going to be doing everything else. It needs to be super clear. And the client pays for the hosting, you provide the expertise. Pretty straightforward. You give them a complete handoff with ongoing support. So just like the first model, full documentation, the Loom videos, all the stuff that I spoke about. But as part of that, you could still give them ongoing training as part of their maintenance or retainer model that they have with you. So then you would also decide what actually gets delivered to the client as part of this maintenance contract. So will you be training their team? How long will you be training their team for? How many requests can they put in each month once you've given them complete handoff? Things like that. It all needs to be discussed up front. And you also need to understand how many sessions that you're going to be doing with these people for specific things. And then the third thing is the retainer partnership. So you need to have defined monthly hours, like I talked about in step 1. And these will include things like updates and fixes, priority support for any critical issues, and maybe what working times that you have with these people. When are you going to be available to give them the support that they need for the products that they're building? But the best part of this entire thing is that because you are doing this retainer partnership, you position yourself as a strategic consultant. So as you're doing the maintenance for these people, you will get involved in their teams and you'll start to learn about all the different problems that they have, which means you have massive upsell opportunities because you'll be able to develop new products for them. Because remember, the products aren't included as part of the maintenance. So say their sales team is talking about one thing, marketing talks about another, recruitment needs something. Those are 3 different things that you can hear, that you can solve problems for, and it's an easy sell because these people already trust you. So there are massive opportunities when you're doing this kind of thing. You grow the automation as the business grows. You move along with them and you keep upselling to them. So it's a really cool thing to do. And then as their retainer needs increase as well, you can just hire one person to join you or something like that to help you actually manage your massive set of clients who now have all of these delivery methods attached to them. So the pros and cons of this, pretty straightforward. Pros are massive. Everything that you do is pretty much a pro in this model compared to the other two because you're going to be making far more money than just choosing one of them. So if you have the capability to understand the client's needs from an architecture and build perspective, but then also from the maintenance perspective, just go straight for this model. I wouldn't bother doing anything else because the pros far outweigh the cons. The cons are that you need ongoing availability, shared responsibility can create the conflicts, but only if you don't set the expectations properly up front, which as a consultant, everybody should be doing clear statements of work, clear scoping, all sorts of things so that the client knows exactly where they stand with you. You need to make sure that you have strong contract terms as well. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in the weeds and end up arguing or potentially losing a client. So this one is best for long-term strategic relationships, and that's exactly what you want as a consultant. So to leave you with a reality check, most successful consultants use different models for different clients, and that's entirely true. I have a much larger framework compared to this, but for every single client that I do, I can pick and choose how I want to work with them because my offer remains the same. I just target different areas of their business and different needs. But that's for another video. The point being, your action plan for this moving forward, start with one model. I would choose hybrid if you have the capability. Master it completely. Use it for your next 10 clients, see how it works out for you, and then consider adding a second option once you get into the swing of things, or if you have a team behind you of contractors or permanent staff, they can really help you do all sorts of things that are creative and with different business models as well. Stop trying to figure out the perfect solution for every single client. You need to just develop a solution that works for you and then sell that to the clients. It doesn't go the other way around. You're not trying to suit every single client here. So say it with me. Stop asking clients to decide for you. The clients will adopt to your model, whatever it is that you're offering. The key is presenting it with confidence so that these people actually buy into whatever it is that you're doing. You want to make sure that you understand what you're selling very clearly so that when you present it to them, they look at you and they're like, yes, please, we need this right now. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Leave some comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, check out the videos on the screen right now. They're definitely going to help you on your journey. And I will see you in the next one.